Crawford! At first glance, this matchup looks like it has a clear, bigger man.
A stocky 5'7" frame, broad chest, and 70 inches reach create the image of raw power. His fights at super middleweight and even light heavyweight reinforce that impression, with Canelo Alvarez making many believe he naturally outsizes welterweights like Terence Crawford. Yet when you look closer at the actual numbers, the surprise is undeniable. Crawford actually stands taller at 5'9", with a much longer 74-inch reach, giving him the physical edge that isn't obvious until you see them side by side. And when it comes to finishing ability, it's Crawford who holds the higher knockout ratio at 76%, compared to Canelo's 62%. Even more telling, in the last 4 years, Alvarez has gone the distance in all of his fights without a single knockout win, while Crawford has stopped nearly every opponent he has faced. With this information in mind, the fight becomes far more intriguing, especially considering how both men have prepared for it in recent years. While Canelo has adjusted his style to pace himself across 12 rounds, Crawford has been tailoring his preparation specifically for this matchup. In his last fight, he deliberately moved up in weight to face Israil Madrimov, a pressure fighter who would force him to work the full 12 rounds. Crawford intentionally went the distance in that bout to test himself in the new division. If he was able to stay sharp for 12 rounds against Madrimov, he should be able to handle Canelo, who has a tendency to switch off in certain moments.
What surprised me was that it seemed like Alvarez started to get winded too early. I could really see the fatigue. After the second half, I saw it in his actions, in his eyes, in the way he moved. Did that surprise you or not?
No, it didn't surprise me, because I saw the same thing in his previous fights. In all of them, in probably all 3 of his last fights, it was the same thing. And I kind of tried to work like he does on the heavy bag. I thought, why does this happen to him? So, what was he doing? He goes after his opponent and just throws these wild swings, like 3 big shots. Bam, bam, bam. He doesn't get hit with any kind of counter combination. He takes a couple of breaths and then goes right back to throwing punches. But when you stand in front of the heavy bag and start throwing 3 hard punches with all your strength, it really takes a lot out of you. And if you miss your target, you waste even more energy. And if you swing and hit nothing but air, it drains you even more. And I noticed that when no one counters him, he feels comfortable. But as soon as someone starts firing back after those hard punches, he immediately gets flustered and starts breathing heavily. And basically, that's what happened here too. He would get tired after throwing his power shots. Of course, you land 3 big punches and want to take a breather, but then a counter comes flying right at you.
Crawford is a switch hitter, meaning he can fight effectively from both orthodox and southpaw stances. His foot positioning is usually wide, giving him strong ring control and making his footwork one of his greatest weapons. At times, he'll use the Philly shell or L guard defensively, but more often, he prefers a forward open stance. Unlike the traditional tight guard, Crawford keeps his elbows looser and further from his body. This unorthodox approach helps him establish control, measure distance with ease, and parry or deflect incoming shots. This becomes especially effective when he fights from the southpaw stance. From there, he extends his lead hand to control space and dictate the rhythm of the fight. Switching stances is not just a tool for Crawford, it's a defining element of his style. He transitions between orthodox and southpaw seamlessly, even mid-combination. This not only confuses opponents, but also creates constant openings. To pull this off, his footwork must be precise, and it is. His lateral movement allows him to evade while staying perfectly balanced to counter. From southpaw, he often uses his extended lead hand as more than just a rangefinder. He mixes in subtle touches, feints, and parries to keep his opponent guessing. Though his jab is sometimes overlooked, it's an underrated weapon, especially from southpaw, where he uses it to manage distance and set up combinations. Defensively, he also relies on his lead hand to parry and instantly fire back with a jab or looping counter. Crawford's counterpunching is one of his deadliest weapons. His mastery of distance punishes opponents when they fall short with their punches. He can counter over the top with looping shots, or even punch at the same time, catching opponents with hooks and overhands when they throw lazy or tentative punches. Against hesitant fighters, Crawford forces action with his trademark southpaw 2-3 combination. Opponents often cover up, allowing him to land clean power shots. If they try to respond after his straight left, Crawford anticipates it and nails them with a perfectly timed lead hook. Against Canelo, though, the challenge is unique. Alvarez fights behind a compact, active high guard, steadily pressing forward to close the distance and unleash power shots. That means Crawford will need to spend more time on the outside, establishing his jab, feinting, and constantly moving laterally to prevent Canelo from setting his feet. Still, he can't simply run. At times, he'll need to hold his ground, smother Canelo's offense, and fire back, much like he did against David Avanesian. The biggest question is whether his counters at this higher weight will carry enough power to make Canelo respect them. Here, the southpaw stance could play a pivotal role. While Crawford sometimes starts orthodox to study his opponent, his southpaw position gives him extra time and space, better distance control with the lead hand, and crucial reaction windows. Vital against someone with Canelo's fight IQ. For Crawford, controlling the long and mid-range looks like the best strategy. Canelo, on the other hand, builds his style on forward pressure behind that high guard, baiting opponents to commit so he can counter. He likes to drive opponents back to the ropes or corners with a double jab, then unload with single power shots from his rear hand. That rear hand in particular forces opponents backward. It's the real threat, while the double jab often serves to stress their nerves. Once he has someone pinned against the ropes, Alvarez mixes in his uppercut or trademarked wide hook, alternating to the head and body. But when opponents refuse to take the bait, he has to keep stepping forward onto his lead foot. That's when he's most vulnerable, as the forward step sometimes leaves him slightly off balance or squared up. Many fighters in the past have exploited this, tagging him with a jab and then angling out as he comes forward. Less experienced opponents, rattled by the pressure, often fall into this trap. That's how Canelo knocked down fighters like Ryder, Charlo, Berlanga, and Munguia. They played into his rhythm, worried too much, and got caught by his single, heavy shots. But despite those knockdowns, all of those fights went to decision. The media narrative paints Canelo as a fearsome puncher, but the truth is more nuanced. His power shots are the result of him exerting maximum effort, not natural heavy hands.
How hard does Saul actually hit? Like, is it really that powerful that everyone just goes down? Or maybe in his own weight class. Yeah, maybe that's true, but for light heavyweight, that's a whole different.
He hits hard in light heavyweight too, though. Yeah, but he doesn't have that natural power. He hits hard because he really tries to hit hard, you know. If I wind up just like he does, yeah, and really try to hit with all my strength, of course my punch wouldn't be much weaker, maybe even stronger. But we all know there are people who just box calmly, throw a jab or a right hand, not even trying to hit hard, but their punches are like rocks. They're just really, really uncomfortable to take. He doesn't have that. I can't say that all his punches are heavy, but if he winds up, well, he just throws with everything he's got, you know, he just openly swings. Of course, when you swing openly like that, yeah, it's powerful.
But that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if I really wind up, I can hit hard too, but overall, I don't really hit that hard. If I'm just throwing punches.
Yeah.
I'm not really hitting hard. There are people who are just born with heavy hands.
But he's more like, you know, just a tough guy.
He's the kind of tough guy who's ready to really put everything into his punches, yeah. But it's not like he was born with that natural power. I think Golovkin, on the other hand, has more of that natural strength. He might be a bit slow at times, but you can see that even when he doesn't seem to be trying to hit hard, his punches still come out heavy. But with Alvarez, you can tell he really wants to hit hard.
True knockout punchers carry power effortlessly. Canelo, by contrast, has to put everything into each shot. Because of this, as he's aged, he's slowed his pace, cutting back on combinations and relying instead on one or two big punches at a time. Against calm, composed, experienced fighters, Canelo's knockout power seems to disappear. We saw this against Bivol, Mayweather, Golovkin, and even against second-tier opponents. All of them said the same thing. Yes, he hits hard, but only when he loads up with everything he has. His standard punches don't carry that same special weight.
I feel like every boxer thought they knew how to beat Canelo. Like every single one.
Who told you?
Whoever I ran into, if I asked each of them, how do you win? Everyone was ready to lay out a plan for me, because people watch the fight once, twice, 3 times. They see his mistakes, analyze them, and want to share their thoughts with someone. Some people share it with each other, and when they see someone who's actually going to box against him, they're ready to spill everything, right? So of course, people study him. I'm the same kind of person. I watched his fights and studied him.
But you,
And I heard from a lot of people.
comments,
Yeah, opinions on how to beat him, for example.
Of course, it's one thing to analyze Alvarez from a distance, and another to deal with him when he's in front of you. No matter how talented Crawford is, he's the one moving up in weight to challenge Canelo's titles. That means he'll feel the pressure to prove he belongs in this division, to show Alvarez that his power demands respect. And Crawford does have a tendency to be a bit careless in the early rounds, using them to study his opponent and experiment with tools from his arsenal, which sometimes leaves him open to unnecessary shots. That's why the first half of the fight could favor Canelo. While Crawford is finding his rhythm, Canelo will have the chance to impose his authority and maybe even score a knockdown. But once Crawford's adaptation period is over, his dominance usually builds round by round. Just remember how he dismantled Errol Spence. It doesn't need repeating. Against fighters who increase the pace as the rounds go on, Alvarez often struggles. In his fights with Golovkin and Bivol, Canelo's frustration became clear in the later rounds. He either pressed forward recklessly or went into a purely defensive shell with little in between. If Crawford can survive the early rounds without losing confidence, he has the chance to pull off a legendary achievement and become a 3-division undisputed world champion. So, who do you think wins this fight, and how?